It's Miss Shafiq speaking again. I hope you're all well and that you've enjoyed the fantastic lessons from Miss Dowling. We've had so much fun recording these lessons, and unfortunately, this is the last lesson on your space topic. I know you've all absolutely loved this topic, and we have as well. So it's a shame to end this topic, but it's a really exciting lesson, and we've got some really nice practicals and lessons for you to complete when you come back to school. So I hope you're looking forward to that as much as I am. For this lesson, we're just going to consider whether or not aliens exist. So we're going to look at a few things that we need to talk about to answer the question of whether aliens exist. So your objectives for this lesson, we're going to recap the essential things that are needed for life. We're going to look at the different ways that we can look for extraterrestrial life. And then we're going to understand the ways that scientists search for that life, the existence of life on other planets. Before we get to that part, let's do a do now task. We've got 4 minutes to do 4 questions. They're very straightforward questions, and they are similar to the questions that you would have answered from previous lessons. So do as many of the questions as you can. You may pause the video, and when you are ready, we will go through the answers together. Okay, let's have a look. Question number 1. What did we say was the ultimate energy source? If you remember from a lesson that you did about energy, I think one of the classes had a live lesson with me as well when we talked about the ultimate energy source. Do we remember what that was? The sun. Well done if you got that one correct. That was the ultimate energy source. Most of our things on planet Earth get their energy from the sun. Question number 2. What is the state of water at 110 degrees? So we know that at 110 degrees water is a gas, because anything before 100 degrees is going to be a liquid. The boiling point of water is 100 degrees. Right, question number 3. This one was quite a tricky one because you had to write loads of things for it. So let's see if you can remember the stages in the life cycle of a supergiant star. If you remember, we did this in a live lesson as well. There are 6 things that you should have written. The first one was the nebula. If you remember, that was the cloud of dust. Second one, protostar, so when that cloud of dust and loads of hydrogen atoms came together under the force of gravity. Third one, we had the main sequence star, and then the 4th stage was the red supergiant. Stage number 5 then was the supernova, that massive explosion that we saw. And then stage number 6, you had 2 options. You could either have a neutron star or a black hole. So really well done if you got those ones correct. And then let's have a look at question number 4. What is a satellite? This is something that you would have learned from Miss Dowling's lesson. What is a satellite? A satellite is an object that orbits a planet. And then I asked you an extension question. What are the 2 different types of satellite that you can get? So you can get a natural satellite, for example, the moon, or you can have an artificial satellite, which is built by us and put into space. So pause the video and make any corrections that you need to make from this slide. If you got all of them correct, I want you to give yourself a massive big tick and a smiley face. And then when you're ready, we'll go on to the next slide. Okay, so I'm just going to show you some information on this slide here. It's just going to be some small bubbles, and we're going to ask ourselves some questions that are going to really help us to answer the question as to whether aliens exist. So I've put a big circle there and I've written aliens, and I'm going to draw loads of little circles around it just to include the questions that we're going to be answering in this lesson. So for aliens, first question I'm going to ask, or it might be the last question that I ask, what do they look like? Another question that I'm going to ask, what do they need to survive? And then the next question that I might ask is, what planet might they live on? What might the planet be like where I might find these aliens? And then for the final question, we're going to ask what conditions are needed on that planet. Okay, so these are some of the things that you might consider if someone asks you whether aliens exist, and if they do, where can you find them and what might they look like if you find them. So copy this information on the page. You may pause the video and then when you're ready, go on to the next slide. Okay, so the first question that we're going to answer about whether or not aliens exist is really, what do they need to exist in the first place? What does something need to be alive? So if you think about yourself, what are the things that you need, or what are the things that the people around you need in order to be living, to be surviving, right? So there are a number of things that we can think about, and we're going to remember these things using the word Mrs. Gren. And some of you may have encountered this in primary school, some of you might not have, but that's okay because we're going to learn about it in our lessons in school next week as well. So what does Mrs. Gren stand for? So each one of these letters relates to something about a living thing. So a living thing needs 7 things to be alive. First one beginning with M, we've got movement. Okay, so if you think about yourself, animals, plants, they all move in some way. So in order for something to be alive, it needs to have movement. Let's see what the R might stand for. Respiration. Some of you may have heard that word before as well. So R stands for respiration. Respiration is a chemical reaction that happens in your body to give you energy. Don't worry about any of these words if they might seem confusing. We're going to go through them together next week. Okay. Right, S stands for sensitivity. That relates to your senses. So if you think about your eyes, ears, nose and mouth, they are linked to your senses. They are going to help you to stay living, to notice your surroundings and to behave accordingly to stay alive. Let's see what the G stands for. G stands for growth. Otherwise we'll all be a planet of babies if we didn't grow, which would be very weird. R, another R, reproduction. So reproduction is really important as well, because if species is to stay alive, so if humans are to stay alive, for example, it's not enough for them to live really healthily and for a really long time. They need to be able to reproduce and have, so that more humans come as the older ones pass away. Right. E, let's have a look at E. What could the E stand for? Excretion. Okay, so excretion is removing all the waste. So if you think about it, when you go to the toilet, you're excreting waste products. You don't want to keep them in your body. That would be also very gross. And then the final one, we've got N, which stands for nutrition, which if you think about it, you eat all the time, right? So you're going to have food that's going to give you nutrition in order to keep you alive. So these are the 7 things that you need. I would like for you to copy down what you see in front of you. Okay. The other thing that wasn't on the list before, or it was included under nutrition, is water. Right? So water is extremely important for life, and it's one of the things actually that scientists look for on other planets. Without water, you can't have life, whether that's animal life, plant life, bacteria, fungus. All of these things need water in order to survive. So it's one of the things that scientists are going to look out for. It's the most important thing that they're going to look for evidence of existence of life somewhere else. So water is extremely important. Now, I said to you that water is really important, but it's important in a really, really specific way. And rather than giving you the answer, I'm going to give you a little, well, it's not a riddle, but I'm going to give you a clue. And I'm going to ask you, what is the link between Earth and Goldilocks? So have a think about it. You can write down what you think your answer might be if you want to, but you don't have to. have a think about what the link could be between Earth and Goldilocks. Think of the story of Goldilocks when she finds the food. What might be the link between Earth and Goldilocks? Okay, you thinking? Yeah, keep those ideas in your mind. When you're ready, you can continue with the lesson. If you want to think about it some more, you can pause the video. Otherwise, I'm about to reveal the answer. Okay, we actually have what's known as a Goldilocks zone, which scientists have named as the Goldilocks zone. Now, the clue, what is the link between Earth and Goldilocks, is that Goldilocks finds some food and she doesn't want it too hot, she doesn't want it too cold, she wants it just perfect. And that's exactly what scientists look for as well when they look at planets in our galaxy or in wherever they can. So part of the hunt for water on other worlds means looking for planets orbiting a certain distance from their stars. So the planets are in this zone. They can't be too hot, they can't be too cold. They have to be just right for liquid water. Okay, so the water has to be a liquid. It can't be an ice, it can't be steam. They look for liquid. And we had some information on the previous page, didn't we, about the stars and the size of the stars and what that meant. So if you remember from our lesson that we did last time, we said that there are different sized stars, didn't we? So our sun, for example, is quite a small star. We have some supergiants that are absolutely massive, and they're going to be very, very hot. So you have some cool stars, you have some stars like our sun, which are quite small. You have some bigger stars that are a lot hotter. And what we need to find is we need to find a planet that's near these stars. So if you can find a planet that's close to these stars, we know that that planet might be warm enough to have liquid water. And what we're going to look for is the Goldilocks zone, which is in green in this diagram. So if a planet is in the blue zone, that means it's too far away from the star and the water is going to turn to ice. If the planet is super close to the star in the middle, in the red zone, that means that it's going to be too hot, more than 100 degrees. All that water is going to turn into steam. So it needs to be just right in the green zone. So let's get that information down into our books. Here's some information about the Goldilocks zone. I would like for you to copy it down. And there are some questions at the bottom where you just have to write the correct answer. You don't have to write both of them. So a hotter star will have a Goldilocks zone further or closer to it. You have to pick the correct word. Okay, so just give yourself a few minutes to copy down this information. It's very, very important that we find the water in liquid form on our planet if we're going to find any form of alien life. Press pause, and when you are ready, let's go on to the next slide. Okay, so now that you've written down the information about the Goldilocks zone, what I would like for you to do is watch this about 8-minute clip from PBS Learning Media. It's a really, really good clip that explains more about the Goldilocks zone and the kind of things that scientists are doing to find planets that might have some liquid water on them. Okay, so pause this video and click on this link, and then when you're finished watching this video, then you can come back to my lesson and continue with the rest of the lesson. Welcome back from having watched that video on water and the Goldilocks zone. I hope you found it interesting. Next slide, what we're going to do is we're going to look at an alien's home. What about an alien's environment? What will its home look like, its habitat? What kind of place is it going to need to live in? So we already said the things that it needs to be living. So in order for something to be alive, it needs to move, reproduce, respire, have senses, it needs to grow. Those are all the things that the alien needed to be living for us to call it a living being. This slide is really about what the alien's environment is going to be like. What about its house? Is it going to have a house? Is it going to have a really nice bookcase with some teapots like you can see in the picture? Come up with the different things that you can think about what an alien's going to need to survive in its environment. What kind of place might you find an alien living in, and what kind of things is it going to need to keep itself safe? So pause the video and write down all the ideas that you can think of, and then when you're done, let's go for the suggestion that I came up with. You might have come up with some better ones, so we'll go through my ones, and if you come up with anything different, then I'll add them to the slide for the next time we teach this lesson. So these are the things that I had as answers for the question that I said to you about the alien's home or its environment. So I wrote maybe roof and walls. It might not be a roof and walls like the roof and walls in your house, but it could be something like a nest, for example, like a bird's nest that's got essentially walls, right? So something that it's going to use to protect itself. So that brings us to shelter. Okay, so an alien might need something or place where it can go to shelter itself from the weather. We don't know what the weather might be like on that planet. It's going to need to shelter itself and protect itself from other predators that might be looking for it. So something to do with shelter. It could be anything. It could be under a bush. It could be under a rock. So wood lice, for example, you'd find them under a rock when you pick it up. Yeah, can you imagine an alien wood lice? Ugh, I don't like wood lice. Right, the next thing, an alien might need some soil for nutrients, or it might need to be around plants or other aliens so that it has really easy access to food. The other thing, the alien might want a community so that it doesn't get lonely. We said before as well, didn't we? So for an alien to be a living thing, to be called a living being, it needs to be able to reproduce. So it can't be living on its own. It's going to be in a community where it can find other aliens, settle down, have some kids, live happily ever after. The next thing, a place to remove some waste. Well, like a toilet perhaps, somewhere where it can get rid of the waste things that it produces, like we go to the toilet to get rid of urine and feces. An alien's going to produce its own different waste products, so somewhere to get rid of that that's not going to affect its living environment. And then the last thing is maybe some nice furniture and car to decorate and to get around. Why not? We don't know what aliens are going to be like, right? They might have the most amazing advanced cars. So these are just some things that you could have written. The last two are a joke. But they're just a couple of things that you could have written as to what an alien's environment is going to look like. So if you want to include any of the ones that I've written, you can do that. If you've got your own ones, absolutely fantastic. I'm sure your teachers are going to really look forward to reading what ideas you've come up with. Okay, so think back to the lessons you had on the space missions. What were the benefits of the lander and rover methods? So we had a number of different methods, didn't we, of different things that can go to space and carry out missions. So one of them, for example, was a flyby, right? So a piece of equipment or a satellite, something that's going to fly by the planet or the moon and take pictures, but it's not going to really land on it. So we had a couple of other ones that were the lander and the rover methods, and these might be important in our search for alien life. So what I want you to do is I want you to look back on previous page and tell me what benefit they might have in our search for alien life. Why might a lander or rover method be really good for seeing if there is alien life on another planet? I came up with two reasons for the answer to this question, and you could have come up with some other ones as well. And the reason why I said that the lander and the rover methods might be important is because they actually land on the surface of the planet that they go to. And when they land on the surface of the planet that they go to, not only do they land there, they can take samples and analyze them there and then and send the information back to us here on Earth. So the first thing that they can check for example, is the presence of water. They can look whether there is water. It doesn't have to be in liquid form. It might be in ice form. And then if the lander then continues on carrying forward, it might find liquid water as well. So it can check for the presence of water. And then the second thing that we could have said is that they can check for nutrients in the soil as well. They have an amazing ability to analyze different chemicals that they come across. They can check for nutrients in the soil. So nutrients that plants, for example, would normally find. Okay, so you've got two different reasons why these space missions are important, not just for understanding about the planet, but understanding about different things that you might find on that planet that suggest there may be alien life. And if we move on to then what the alien may look like, this is really important. So I said here, for example, checking for nutrients in the soil might be important for plants. Aliens don't necessarily look like this. Okay, every time anyone thinks of aliens, they think of green dudes um, like this. It doesn't necessarily have to be the case. These are really complicated organisms. Aliens could be extremely this really simple bacteria cell, for example, is just one cell on its own and it's a living thing. So it could just be a bacteria cell. Alien could look like these fungus. So it's unlikely that aliens look like the green dudes that you see. You might have alien fungus, like you might have some alien mushrooms. Why not? Or you might have some alien plant, like grass. Yeah, so aliens don't necessarily have to look like the green things that you might see on TV. They could look like anything because all of these different things, whether you've got bacteria, plants, animals, they're all living things. So in the search for alien life, we don't necessarily have to look for aliens that look or speak like us. It could just be bacteria. It could be some mold that's growing on a rock somewhere. That could be alien life. Okay? And that's the end of that lesson. You guys have done really well, and that's the end of the topic as well. So thank you very, very much for allowing me to teach you this topic. I know me and Miss Dowling, like I said at the beginning, have absolutely loved teaching this topic. So hopefully we will both see you in school. If you do see us, come and say hi. We'd love to say hello to you. And stay safe. Bye.